I'd like to talk about a term that New Mexico citizen has recommended, as he calls himself a compliance auditor. Compliance auditor. Compliance auditor. That's an appropriate term. And I might add that a year and a half ago or so, James Madison Audits, a highly respected advocate who was a police officer, a motorcycle cop, who gets it. We're fortunate to have him. James Madison Audits said that he was hoping to find an all-encompassing term for First Amendment auditor, and that it is confusing to the general public when you try to explain it to them. It's always easier to just jumpstart it right with paparazzi and work your way from there. It's not an easy step to get someone who doesn't get it, the nuances of the Constitution. Short phrase, you get it. You understand the nuances, so we don't have to explain that whole long series. You either get it or you don't. We really should be here to teach those who haven't gotten it. And we don't need to teach everybody. We don't need to teach 51% for this to work and make even greater changes than we have already. Compliance auditor. It's the set that encompasses all the subsets of the other terms, whether it's activist or advocate or First Amendment auditor or just auditor or observer or cop watcher or cop blocker or free press or citizen free press or journalist or any combination of the above. That New Mexico citizen who's a highly respected individual within this community, everyone doing things for their own reason. We're all individuals. Anyone holding a camera up in front of a potential wild-in, you put yourself in a different position than the regular citizen who just merrily walks by in content and paying the bills that week. Compliance auditor. Call yourself what you'd like, but which you should. If you're a specialist in one of these other things and you feel comfortable, you do your thing. But I'm all for furthering liberty as opposed to diminishing it. So everything we do does one or the other, generally speaking. And it's from the perception of those who don't get it yet. There's no great value other than the entertainment and the support we get. For our host channels who are out there in the trenches, they should be supported. To give us pats on the back, to already get what we already know when we do it at the expense of those who don't get it. The citizens who walk about the streets, who many of us were those same people just a few years ago. How fast we forget. Compliance auditor. Catching the animal in its natural habitat. That's really what we do. We're catching the public servants in what they're supposed to do naturally, as though we're a fly on the wall. The commonality, ultimately to me, is that we all want to follow the Constitution and a single set of laws so we can live happily ever after and never need to do an audit again. Of course, we have to trust and verify so they know that when the cat's away, the mice will play. An employer doesn't have to be friends with their employees, but they can be friendly. If they don't like it, they're a free agent. They can leave if they want. In public service, that we, the people, or the press, putting on that label, which we all can do through the First Amendment, guaranteed as the only profession mentioned in the Constitution. That's amazing and wonderful. Constitutional republic that makes us different and more difficult to maintain, but still wonderful in itself compared to a democracy. A constitutional republic is what we are. We're not a democracy. We don't rule by majority. We don't score our football games by the most yards gained. Our rules have it by the most points scored. Enlightened founding fathers wanted to have as many levels of protection, of checks and balances that they possibly could. They were very cautious. They didn't like tyrants, they didn't like emotional distress within the fears and minds of a population heading towards being a mob. Both parties are equally totalitarian at their extremes. Constitutional words lives matter. Compliance auditor. Catching the animal in its natural habitat. Catching the public servant as a fly in the wall during the course of their public duties while taking the public dime to make certain that they're being efficient and cordial and respectful and move those lines up smoothly and efficiently, and to do records requests appropriate, not to put extra unnecessary burdens upon them, because there is only so much budgeted to spend on the staff that they have to do those records requests. So there is some legitimacy at times to have some additional surcharges. When they start getting in the thousands of dollars, you start questioning them as they do from time to time. Compliance auditor. We don't have to be honed in as though, oh, this is a tradition. We've been doing it this way for 100 years or 10 years, barely 5 years. We're just coming out of the pains of birth. We can adjust and adapt and use words that work best for us and know what our goals are, which I think is to further liberty. There's no actual set that consists of all the little subsets within it. It just defines it better. It makes explaining easier, I think. Not that it's easy to begin with, it has to be done patiently with those who don't yet get it. Those who watch us as viewers generally already get it. Although some of the older minors are important, it's important to educate the children. There are ways to do it. I have suggestions where the kids will even go back home and to say, Mom, Dad, I learned that this old document people were trying to screw us over for the wealthy people. There's actually some stuff in there about the cell phone cameras that I have that gives me power. I didn't know about that. I was asking what else this old document can do for me. Go home and they'll explain the nuances to their parents, and maybe some of them will get it. We don't need a lot of percentage of the entire constituency to get it. 10% of colonists, when we took a nation from Great Britain, the most powerful country ever on earth, made our own constitutional republic remarkable. People were willing to give their lives. At the time, they were reasonable men, our enlightened founding fathers. Jefferson, Adams, Madison. Compliance auditor, again recommended by New Mexico citizen who uses that term for himself, to catch and show the world all the idiocies and ineptitudes of public servants he has to deal with, and the court systems, and all the levels of police, and trying to force them to comply, demanding and educating that public servants simply comply with the law. Compliance auditor, compliance auditor, compliance auditor. We don't have to be subject to any particular word. Words that don't seem to further liberty, like Karens and Brads. And those are the ones who don't get it. Why would we want to distance them and chase them away? We're either furthering liberty or we're diminishing furthering liberty. It's your choice. It's your time with educational activists or instigating activists, which is not against the law to be annoying, or ultimately overly instigating activists, which clearly don't further liberty at all. It's just to use payback for all the inequities and for justifiable reasons from that individual's perspective. Don't get me wrong. They have a right to do it because it's legal, and they've finally gotten power where they never did before to embarrass cops. That's their purpose, and it would only be coincidental if any ancillary benefits came out of that to further liberty. Most likely would diminish liberty because of the perspective of all those people in that cloud world on the sidewalk who don't yet get it. We want to teach those who don't know we don't need a lot. I think 2% of our constituency get it. Everybody, the 300 million. I think 2%. Figure out if we know what we're doing actually helps or we just think it helps. I do wish you well, and I do love all of you who further liberty more than you harm it or diminish it. And to follow educational activists if you have only so much time to share. Ending with a smile.